Hey everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ariel, and this is Ariel Astro Travels. Today we will be talking about how to be an ethical traveler, how to travel ethically as a digital nomad, how to move abroad ethically, and what we need to consider if we are going to be traveling or moving abroad outside of our home country. Often mobility and travel are framed as freedom, as liberation, or as luxury, but for many people, traveling has never been neutral. Right now, with everything going on in the country, in the United States, all of the current political climate, there's a lot of folks leaving the US to find safer and better places to go, especially for Black queer folks. Myself as a Black queer folks, that was part of my decision to live and travel as a nomad, is because of everything that's going on. It's really unsafe for marginalized communities at this time. They're looking at travel as a response to the escalating political violence and all of the stuff that is happening in the US. For many folks, traveling isn't just a lifestyle or a luxury change. It is a sense of safety, and it is mandatory. It's not a choice. It's something that has to happen because of the current political climate, because of the escalating violence for LGBT folks, for trans folks, because of all of the bills and the laws and the anti-DEI. There just is a lot of folks who are considering leaving the US because they feel like this is the time to do it. And if they don't leave now, when will they leave? There's a lot of fear that if they stay in the US, things are going to get worse and worse. And so traveling isn't just about finding luxury and exploring a new country, but sometimes it's about safety, and the choice feels a lot more heavy and a lot more nuanced. To me, ethical migration or travel means taking into account our own lived experiences and our privileges as we move to whatever country we're going to move to. There is a lot of countries that are pushing back on digital nomads, that are pushing back on people moving abroad, and there are others who are embracing them. And so I think it's important to do your research if you're going to travel as a digital nomad, or if you're going to move abroad, to make sure that you're not contributing and becoming part of the problem, but that you're contributing to being a part of the solution. Traveling and moving abroad ethically requires more than just your good intentions. It requires accountability and reciprocity. It requires that you take time to have relationships with the land and the people and the places that you're traveling to. A lot of digital nomads may be trying to check off boxes, or, seeing all the 7 wonders of the world, which, yes, absolutely do that, right? I want to do that as well. But how can we also, as we're touching all the 7 wonders of the world, maybe support and uplift the communities that we're entering, that we're being a part of, and that we're traveling to? I think the most important thing to note if you're traveling ethically is to not become like the thing that has displaced us, to not become like the government that has displaced us, or the policies that have displaced us, to not become like a colonizer, to not become a gentrifier. And there are some things like being a gentrifier that we can't help, but I do think that there are ways that you can ethically travel to help mitigate and reduce the amount of gentrification or displacement that happens in each of the communities or places that you travel to. Practicing ethical nomadism or ethical travel or ethical moves abroad involves choosing reciprocity over extraction. It means that you are going to build reciprocal relationships with the land and the people of the places that you're going to. You're going to support local businesses. You're going to shop local businesses. You're going to pay taxes in that place. You're going to learn the language. You're going to figure out how to have a reciprocal relationship with the places that you're going to. If you're traveling there temporarily and you just want to see the 7 wonders and go, fine. But if there's a part of you that wants to build a life there, that wants to stay there long term, think a little bit deeper about your relationship with the land and your relationship with the people that live there. Invest in and support and take part in things that are part of their everyday life and their everyday culture. Find ways to appreciate the culture and the land and the people instead of appropriating, extracting, or colonizing. To me, the opposite of being a colonizer or a gentrifier to the land is someone who is a guest to the land, akin to the land, or a steward of the land. So I'll be talking today about what each of those mean and how you can avoid being a colonizer and a gentrifier and lean more into being akin to the land, a steward to the land, or just a guest on the land, depending on what your travel needs are. Colonization is often rooted in entitlement. It's arriving somewhere with an assumption of access, ownership, or authority. And so we want to think about what the opposite of that is if we're entering into any space. Exploring without colonizing means to explore without trying to romanticize or appropriate the culture. So when you're talking about something, think about how you can appreciate the culture, tune into what the locals are saying, into the local language, learn how to pronounce things correctly, find ways to truly allow yourself to fully appreciate the culture that you're witnessing, the land that you're witnessing, the people that you're witnessing, without appropriating it, extracting from it, or romanticizing it. And there's a fine line between romanticization and appreciation, right? But we can find ways to do that. The goal is not to be perfect. I'm not perfect in this, and no traveler is going to be. The goal is to make sure that you're open to right relationship, which means that you're accountable if you make mistakes and you're willing to acknowledge them. So what's the difference between a guest, a steward, a kin of the land, and how do they differ from being a colonizer? So a colonizer is somebody that moves with entitlement. They extract land, they extract labor, they extract the culture without consent, without accountability. They prioritize ownership and speed and self-interest over having right relationship, over local histories, over sovereignty in the process. So colonizers often ask, what can I get from this place? So they go to a place trying to figure out what they can gain from that place, what they can take with them. So when you think of a colonizer, you think of Christopher Columbus, for example, and there is a journal that someone found on Columbus and folks in Columbus's camp that basically talked about the natives as naive and as too giving and as too kind, and that they were willing to give the shirt off their back. And he saw them as naive, and he saw them as things that he could take from. Like, they're so stupid, they're not even gonna know that I'm going to steal this whole thing from under them, right? Like, how off is that? And he was basically saying that he can find ways to manipulate them and to get what he wanted from them. And that's kind of the way that a colonizer thinks. They go to a land, they visit people, and they see how they can take advantage of them, manipulate them, and take from them, instead of how they can have a right relationship with them, how they can be in relationship with them, how they can support them and help them, and how they can share, right? The Native and Indigenous folks were really about community and connection, and they were super generous and they offered a lot. And instead of seeing that and trying to find a way to balance that and also offer and also be generous and also be caring, they instead saw how they can manipulate and take advantage of them. And my goodness, isn't that like a microcosm of what we're experiencing in the US today? What leadership looks like when you have somebody who wants to take and who's leading from a place of greed rather than a place of reciprocity. So that's kind of what a colonizer is. They're someone who really just does not care about how their actions impact other people, and they're only focused on their own self-interests. A guest is someone that understands their privilege, but then also understands that they're temporary, right? So a guest knows that they're temporary in the space, and they allow that to be okay. They may listen more than they talk. They may give as much as they receive. They respect the boundaries of the land, of the locals. They accept correction without defensiveness. They release expectations of comfort. They know I'm a guest in this, right? I may have culture shock. I may not know the language. I may not understand the food, but I'm open to trying things. I'm open to practicing the language. I'm open to experiencing what it is this place has to offer. And they arrive with humility, curiosity, and accountability. They're curious about learning about the land and learning about the people and experiencing the place as the locals would. So rather than asking, what can I get from this place like a colonizer would, a guest may say, how can I respect the place that I'm visiting while I'm here temporarily? How can I show up to make sure that I respect the people, places, and things that I'm visiting? I can appreciate it, I can experience it, but most of all, how can I respect it? The next is a steward, and a steward is someone that takes responsibility for their impact. So a guest knows that they're temporary, whereas a steward may take that a little bit deeper. You could be a steward of a land that you're from. You could be a steward of a land that you were born on, but you can also be a steward of land that you're not on. There are tons of spiritual practitioners, healers, shamans that travel around to different places, and they're stewards of the land, and they care for the land in different ways. So stewardship means caring for the land and the communities and the systems that makes their presence possible there. Their intention is to leave the place no worse, if not better, than when they found it. And the stewards want to honor the land's history, its culture, its spiritual practices, recognizing that care is both practical and sacred. So they think about the practical, grounded things that they can do. Maybe it's, cleaning up trash on the street, or gardening, or volunteering at a local shelter, whatever it is, right? They think about those kind of things. And also the sacred. So how can they commune with the land spirits, and how can they talk to the ancestors, and how can they ground into Earth's network, right? So thinking a little bit deeper than just the practical, but also the sacred, the emotional. This is coming from a more spiritual perspective. To be a steward of the land is coming from a more spiritual perspective, but not always. There's a lot of people who are stewards of the land who probably wouldn't even use spiritual language. They just really care for Earth, and maybe they're like a really good gardener, or they're a really good, XYZ. Like they have these skills that they use and that they offer to the land or offer to the places that they live. A kin-orientated relationship goes a little bit different. To be kin to the land is like to be family, right? Kin is like, that's my dog. So you're wanting to be in a relationship with the land that goes further than a steward. So stewards can be in places temporarily, whereas kin-oriented relationships may want to go a little bit deeper than that. So someone who's kin, they may ask, how can I build a reciprocal relationship with this land? How can I make sure that I support the land without claiming ownership or false familiarity with it? How do I intentionally, slowly, and thoughtfully be in a reciprocal relationship in a way that makes sure that the land is cared for? So where colonizers dominate, guests respect. Where colonizers extract, stewards caretake. And where colonizers isolate themselves from the consequences of their action, kin remains in right relationship. They make sure that they're accountable to keeping the relationship with the land beneficial and reciprocal. If you want to move abroad ethically, it's really important to refuse to treat relocation as consumption and to refuse to be entitled. If you hear loud music on your new street, you might just have to deal. That may be something you have to take into consideration when you're looking into neighborhoods. What's the noise like? Spend time there. Get a hotel in that area. Figure out what the neighborhood is like before you move into it. Don't go there and then call the police on folks because of the way that they're naturally living in the environment. I've lived all over New York City, all over New York, and in many different places. And each time I dealt with whatever it came with. If that meant that I would hear sirens every day at 5 p.m., then I would hear sirens every day at 5 p.m. If that meant my neighbors worked out and I heard their stomping, then that means my neighbors worked out and I heard their stomping. Whatever it is that you're experiencing in that neighborhood, you have to just let yourself become adjusted to it. And of course, there are caveats to that. If you have an opera singer and they practice in their apartment, you're gonna hear opera singing occasionally on certain days. And that's just part of the neighborhood, you know? Essentially, all I want you to know is that ethical travel is not about perfection. It's not about being the perfect travel. It's not about getting everything right, but it's about being willing to make repairs and being willing to be accountable and being thoughtful and intentional. Even if your intentions are great, though, your impact may not always be amazing. And so it's important to acknowledge not only your intention, but also your impact, and just to try to do your best as you enter any space. Learn the language if you can, talk to locals, be aware of who you are, try not to be entitled, and just use your discretion and try to be a good human as you enter all of the spaces that you do. As many Americans decide to leave the United States to the response for the unsafe government, I want us to not carry with us the patterns of overconsumption and entitlement and colonization that comes with what people think about America. It's often in other countries, when you say you're from America, they bristle because of the type of Americans that typically travel and the way that they treat locals. And so just be different. Just be kind, just be loving, be caring, and show respect to the people and the land that you're a part of. And that was my thoughts on ethical travel. If you're interested in learning more, please feel free to see my Substack article. Shameless plug, I wrote more about this in Substack. I'm so much better at written content than I am at video content, so feel free to check out my Substack for more information. Bye.